We're talking about the theme for September, which is think outside that box. Think outside that box. And, you know, we can get so stuck inside the box thinking, in that way of thinking. And why is it we do that? Because it's predictable, it's familiar, it's habitual, it's routine. In that box is where we know stuff. In the box is where we think we know everything, pretty much. We have it all figured out. And thinking outside the box takes us into unfamiliar territory, certainly. And, of course, that's what imagination does, is take us outside the box, no question. You can't stay in the box and be also letting your imagination do what it does. And that can be very exciting, can't it, when you get outside the box? And also, it can be quite disturbing, especially if we're still hanging on to that, well, I need things to be secure, predictable, and all of that. Then it's not very much fun to be outside that box. But if we're willing to go out there, it's really exciting. It is. So, as I've told you each Sunday, I want to reiterate this because it's such a powerful and simple concept. What's inspired this was what I had heard a minister say at a meeting in Orlando recently, which was about Raymond Charles Barker, who was one of our early, not that early, I mean, he lived until about the 1999, something like that, and wrote a lot of books that many of you know about. He was a minister, a very powerful science of mind minister and teacher and author, and also a very no-nonsense kind of guy. And so whenever he found himself worried or confused or lacking in some way, he would sit himself down in his chair and loudly and firmly simply declare, Barker, you need a bigger idea. You need a bigger idea. He didn't sit there and ruminate and analyze, struggle to figure it out. He didn't even do a 5-step spiritual mind treatment. Not that there's anything wrong with those. We love our spiritual mind treatments, our affirmative prayers. It's a great process. But he really cut to the chase, didn't he? You need a bigger idea. And you know, that is a powerful spiritual reminder. That's not just an intellectual exercise. All the great spiritual teachings in some way or another have invited us to have a bigger idea. And so he did that, and you know, that has been guiding me for the last month. I love it, because no matter what has come up in my path, and I don't know about you, but I have stuff that comes up in my path, speed bumps and unexpected stuff, and that comes into my mind, and it's so simple. I don't even need to, sit and do a reading or anything, and just get a bigger idea, Karen. So I invite you to take that with you, because that is getting outside the box, certainly. It means thinking outside the box of limiting ideas. So whatever's going on with you this week, I invite you to keep that in mind. And this is so significant because, let me remind you of something else that we know and we allude to almost every time we're talking about this marvelous teaching of science of mind, new thought, is that there's nothing that happens in the physical world that is not preceded by an idea. So that's always the place to start. Not rearranging the furniture, rearranging the conditions. Starts with an idea, so that's where I go when I want to make some changes or figure out or know or get some guidance or whatever it is. Go to the idea. So, as I said, as we venture into that unknown space outside the box, it can be scary. You know how we say fear of the unknown, as though the unknown is always a bad thing. But it can be scary. And that place outside the box for each one of us is different. It's unique to each one of us. So, for some people it might be, I'm going to go get on a spaceship, the next spaceship to Mars or the moon. That's my outside the box. For another person it might be, I'm going to take a different route to work today. But whatever it is, push the boundary, push and get outside that box. So, and also remember, when you're outside the box, it may be scary, but you're also in that field of unlimited possibility. Unlimited possibility. Inside the box, It's limited. Outside, it's unlimited. And by the way, the other thing to remember, sometimes you're outside the box because you've been kicked out of the box. You know, a relationship breaks up, a job doesn't go well, you get a piece of health news, something pushes you outside the box. And often we voluntarily step outside and say, you know, I am going to play around with a bigger idea. So if you'd like to catch up on the series, they're available at our website, podcasts that are free. The first Sunday was Unplugged from the Box. And then the second week was Explore Outside the Box. You're out there and you're just saying, okay, let me just see what I got going on here. And then we had our guest speaker, Reverend Emil Govreau, last Sunday, who talked about your infinite possibilities, which are what I just said, outside the box. Today we're talking about, okay, now I'm outside wandering around there. Now I'm going to create something outside the box. And then next week, live outside the box. So here we are. We've unplugged from the box, and we're exploring. It's unfamiliar territory. And now let's create something out here. But wait a minute. If you're like me, it might be like that. The title of that first science fiction book, actually the only one I ever read, but I loved it. Stranger in a Strange Land. Outside the box, that's how it can feel. And you want me to create something? Hello, I'm just out here feeling like I'm on the skinny branches. But whatever the challenge is, positive or not, outside the box again, it can be scary. And yet, yes, I'm inviting you to consider creating something outside that box. And the reason I can say this unequivocally is because I also draw from what Ernest Holmes, the architect of our teaching, said. Simply, life has entered you with the irresistible impulse to create. That's in your DNA. That's life's energy in you. It's an irresistible impulse to create. He is often, as we have quoted him, also saying principle is not bound by precedent. And what that's saying is principle, God, the energy, the infinite possibilities outside the box, all of that is brand new all the time. It is not limited by precedent. It is not limited by all the predictable things we see in the box. So he was a great one. I don't think he ever used the term go outside the box or create outside the box, but everything that he taught was about that. Everything in our teaching points us in that direction. Martha Graham was a brilliant choreographer and dancer. I'm sure many of you have heard of her, remember her, and she was, talk about creative to the max. But she said this about creativity, so you can remember, it isn't all hearts and flowers and bliss. She said, first of all, I don't think in creativity there's ever a precedent. She said, each moment is new and terrifying and threatening and bursting with hope. That's the package. So you might be sitting there saying, well, I'm not really a creative person. I just, other people are. They paint big paintings and they do all these, they dance, they act, they're all of these creative expressions. It's not me. Well, I found this book that I have just loved. You can tell when I'm reading a book a lot. All these little stickies in there, big magic. Creative Living Beyond Fear. It's written by Elizabeth Gilbert, who also wrote Eat, Pray, Love, if you remember that book. This book, I love it because it reads like kind of an up-to-date version of Science of Mind and Ernest Holmes on the whole subject of ideas and of creativity. And so she said it this way. She said, if you're alive, you're a creative person. End of story. If you're alive, you're a creative person. And furthermore, she said, inspiration is looking for you. And I especially love this part that she says. She says that inspiration that's looking for you, it comes from a place of, hey, why not? Hey, why not? You don't have to start out with the full-blown, this is my plan to be creative. It's more like going along and saying, why not? Why don't I try it? I love that. So if you're alive, if you're breathing, you're creative. And by the way, let's take a look at what creative means, or what the act of creating is. It doesn't mean we're pulling something out of a hat that never existed before. It does not mean we're all of a sudden doing a magic trick that brings into being something that wasn't. Everything that ever was and will be is already here in the cosmos somewhere. It's infinite. All the elements, all the pieces, it's all there. So what you and I are invited to do, instead of try to make something out of nothing, is to discover the pieces, the things that support whatever our creative endeavor is, to welcome new ideas, welcome them, not dismiss them, and then rearrange them. There are infinite ways to rearrange the elements, the ideas. If you've got a problem you're working on or a creative project you're working on, if you really stay open-minded and willing to discover, there are lots of ways you rearrange it. You find ways you say that you never thought of. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't exist. It's just that you didn't think about arranging it in that particular way. So that's our role in the creative process, and it takes the pressure off for me to realize it's all here. It's just for me to discover it and be willing to rearrange it and be open to infinite ideas. And that's what we do in spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer, which is such a powerful tool that we always revert to when we're talking about anything in this center. The underlying principle is that of that kind of affirmative prayer. What we do is we affirm that whatever the desire, it already exists. We might say it exists in the mind of God, it exists in the universe, it exists for me. I don't see it yet. I don't understand how it can happen, but I'm going to the knowing that it exists. And that is so powerful compared with, please God, give me what I want. You know what? The old idea we would have of prayer, which was begging and pleading with God and maybe even bargaining a little to give us what we want, withholding somehow. I love the power of spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer. And when you put your prayer requests in, that's why we have an opportunity for you to indicate the God quality underneath, the quality that you are looking for, the quality, the bigger idea of what you're desiring. It's that something that's already in existence. And then we're open to the new ideas, to the new pieces that show up, to the amazing things that we would never have even thought of. It's already done. I remember when I was probably still a ministerial student in Atlanta, and my teacher minister had invited me to give a talk on a Sunday, and I was kind of wringing my hands about it and getting it ready, and he said, "Oh, Karen, it's already done in the mind of God. It's already complete." What? But what that did was remind me that, I don't have to be struggling to make something happen that isn't already there. He said it's already complete. Try that. Try that if you're facing a project. And just sit with that and say, remember, you don't have to know how, you don't have to figure it out, but just say, it's complete. It's complete in the one mind, in the mind of the intelligence of the universe, God, whatever name you want to call it. It's complete. And now my role is to discover it, to be an avenue for it. It takes the pressure off. Children know this. My little nephew, when he was about, I'd say maybe 2 years old, maybe 2.5, and his daddy would every morning be getting him up, and he would sing a song. This kid was just happy. He was singing all the time. And he was singing a song that his dad didn't recognize. And he said, "Where did you learn that?" He said, "I made it up." So then he said, He said, I made up another one too. Oh, let me hear it. Well, I'm still downloading it. I haven't downloaded it yet, so when I'm done, you can hear it. He knew he wasn't making it up. It was coming through him to him. So that's another way to look at this. We're downloading our creative expression. So, as I said, when you're open to being outside the box and creating outside the box, you want to be open to ideas. Do you ever struggle with, I got to come up with an idea? I do. I'm searching for an idea. I forget that ideas are searching for me. Raymond Charles Barker used to say that ideas are looking for you. Ernest Holmes wrote this. He said, many inventors have this conviction that all ideas exist in the universe and that we, or they, draw them out of the universe, that they are merely channels for a greater source of wisdom, surrounded by an infinite mind which knows all things and which is always pressing against us, trying to acquaint us with these ideas. He wrote this, back in the 40s and 50s, that inventors recognized that the ideas were coming to them and through them. And he ended that by saying, and personally, I believe this to be true. So that was his recognition of the downloading, the process. Elizabeth Gilbert, in her book, again, of Big Magic, she put it this way. She said, ideas are pure energy, driven by one impulse, and that impulse is to be made manifest, to show up in material form in some way. Otherwise, ideas are they're floating around all over the place. And their one impulse is to find a way to express by means of us, she says, I'm talking about all ideas, artistic, scientific, industrial, commercial, ethical, religious, political, yes, even political. She said, all those ideas are looking for ways to express. She said, they're searching for available and willing human partners to collaborate with and to materialize. And when an idea thinks it has found somebody, say maybe you, who might be able to bring it into the world, she said, the idea will pay you a visit. It will try to get your attention. But often you won't notice because you're so consumed by your dramas, your anxieties, your distractions, your insecurities, your busyness. That's our, life happening. She says that you aren't even receptive to inspiration. Your antennae aren't up. You're not paying attention. And so she said, well, the idea will try to wave you down, maybe for a few moments, perhaps a few months, a few years. Have you noticed that? Have you had some ideas that have kind of tapped you on the shoulder through the years sometimes, or maybe through several months, and you forget about it, and then it comes back, and you say, I've had that idea before. She said, and then she said, there will be that time when you're relaxed enough, when you're open, and the idea will start to tap you on the shoulder again, and you'll say, hey, why not? And you'll have, she said, at that moment, it will be palpable. You know that feeling? When you have an idea and you sort of give it attention, you say, maybe, why not? And you kind of get shivers and your little butterflies in your stomach, and your heart's beating a little faster. It's a very palpable thing. And then she said, when you're in that point, the idea will start to organize coincidences and synchronicities across your path, and you will start to notice all kinds of signs pointing to the fulfillment of that idea. Ideas, wow. And they're looking for us. And these are leading us, of course, or we find them outside the box. And this is how we find a creative response to a dilemma we might be facing, a problem we're trying to solve. And who doesn't have at least one problem? I do, that I'm, kind of sit down. It usually pops up in the morning when I first wake up, or in the middle of the night, or, there's that something. I want to approach it with a creative mindset, open to ideas, the bigger idea. Now, I have some examples of thinking outside the box, creating outside the box. I was looking through several resources, and there are so many. Do you realize, again, we get so stuck with the media and the thinking inside the box, and we think this is the way people are behaving or not behaving, and this is the way the world is going, and I think the sky is falling. You know, we get into that. There's a very limited view. And when we start looking outside, there are hundreds of examples that I found of people taking an outside-the-box approach to life. Now, here are three of them. The first one was a 24-year-old young man named Louis Hornby, and his grandmother had dementia. And he didn't realize until after she had been taken to the emergency room that the whole issue was dehydration. For people, we all know that water is very important, but with dementia, it's extremely critical and such an easy, it doesn't cure it, but it's a great, keep the brain is a lot water, so let's provide the liquid. But the problem was patients suffering from dementia, including his grandmother, don't much like to drink water, and in fact, they have an easier time eating than they would be drinking water, and so it was just really hard to get her to drink water. So what he did is he got to work developing a solution called jelly drops, and what these are small hydrating treats that are made to look like candy. And he said the goodies are made up of 90% water, and then some gelling agents and electrolytes. And patients suffering from dementia then will likely go for candy. If they're going to eat anything, they'll more go for the candy than for, say, something nutritious. Wouldn't we all, huh? Never mind that one. And so he said he first offered it to his grandmother, and she ate 7 jelly drops in 10 minutes. And he said that's the equivalent to a cup full of water, something that would usually take hours and a whole lot of assistance for her to consume. And he said if she ate the whole box, it comes in a pre-packaged thing, that doesn't look like medication. That was the other important thing. He put it in an attractive, fun container so that it would be, again, more inviting. And the whole box would account for around half the necessary daily fluid intake for her. And she loved it. And what a great, great solution. Talk about outside the box. Who would have ever thought of, these jelly things with all water in them? And he has been recognized by getting several engineering awards, and medical associations have also recognized him for this innovative health solution. Right now, it's being tested in the United Kingdom in nursing homes and will be expanded for distribution shortly. So that's one example. Another is a man who bought a school bus, ripped out all the seats, and made it into a transport vehicle for pets, for animals who were in shelters and abandoned or in trouble during the aftermath probably during the aftermath of hurricanes. When Hurricane Harvey, which we all remember, that was just in 2017, his name is Tony Alsop, he heard about all the animals who were in need of rescuing from the danger area. Remember, there was so much flooding. And so he simply bought that school bus with the seats ripped out, filled the passenger area floor to ceiling with kennels, and started picking up as many shelter animals as he could to fill those spaces. And then he took them he had a friend who had an animal shelter in Alabama. He took them there, and he went back. 51-year-old man, he had been going back and forth. Now he's been going back and forth in North and South Carolina to rescue shelter pets from Hurricane Florence. Last week, he rescued 64 animals from 4 different shelters in just 2 days, and he brought them all to his friend's shelter, and then he went back for more. Outside the box, I see a problem, and I how can I help? Get a school bus, rip out all the seats, and fill it with kennels. And this last one is really way outside the box. It's about playing music for blind elephants. There's a concert pianist who, let's see, do I have his name here? It's not. I saw the whole video. Barton. His last name is Barton. I watched the whole documentary this week. Amazing. But here's the deal. He was a successful concert pianist, and yet he found, I'm not fulfilled by this profession. So he and his wife moved to Thailand in 1996 and started rescuing elephants and bringing them and somehow helping them be brought to a sanctuary for retired elephants, for elephants who had been abused horribly, and many of them, through the abuse, had been blinded. And so they were being rehabilitated and cared for in this sanctuary. And this man had such a big heart, first of all, for just the inhumane way. He said, I feel I owe these animals an apology, grace, something for what we have done to them. So he hauled his beautiful piano, and at one point it was a spinet, and then he got a baby grand piano later, outside, outdoors, out in the field. If you've ever seen movies or pictures of an animal sanctuary, it's just very, brush, and there they are. And he started playing music. And he said the animals loved it, particularly the ones who couldn't see. And he said, here's one example. He said, each time I played music for this one elephant, whether it was my flute or the piano, there was the same reaction every time. The elephant would stand for a while, perfectly still, and then he would curl his trunk and hold it in his mouth until the piece was over, no matter how long I played. And I saw it in the video. It was kind of amazing to see these elephants either moving around or swaying. And they were very peaceful. But when the music started, something magical happened. He started filming it. He put it on YouTube to raise funds, just hoping it would get the word out, to raise funds for the sanctuary. And it went viral. And there were so many hits that the documentary was made. And it is called Playing Music, or Music for Blind Elephants. Outside the box. I mean, when I saw that headline, immediately I thought, what? Now, I know I love elephants and I appreciate so much about them. But a guy with a grand piano in the middle of a sanctuary playing, and these animals just loved it. So you see, thinking outside the box may be something huge like these examples I've given you, or it might be some, as I said, little thing, take a different route to work, some little different approach to what you're facing this week. So how are you going to do this? Well, that could be a whole seminar, of course, but I was thinking about it, and basically it's this. Sit. S-I-T. Sit. Surrender, imagine, and trust. Surrender, all you have to do, I love what Holmes said, develop a good-natured flexibility about it. When I say surrender, I'm not saying anything, like give up all your earthly goods and go to an ashram. No. He said, relax, just relax. Go do something fun. Don't be staring at it. Stop paddling and start floating. Do something relaxing. And say yes to life, as the Eddie Watkins Jr. song says. What are we going to create today? The universe is ready to play. That's surrender. That's being in that place where that idea that's been tapping you on the shoulder or trying to will come to you. You're available to it. The second thing then is, of course, imagine, and my goodness, we heard it in that beautiful song by Bob. Imagine, perfect, pure imagination. And the song by the Beatles, of course, it is so invites us always to a bigger idea. Imagine. And Albert Einstein said something to the effect that imagination is far more important than intellect. Holmes said it this way. He said, it's not enough merely to say there's one mind and that mind is God's mind. We must add, and that mind is my mind now. There's one mind, that mind is God's mind, and that mind is my mind now. And he said, and then when you do that, you're completing the thought, making it possible to loose the divine intelligence through your imagination. And he continues to say, the imagination plays a vital role if we wish to live creatively. And he follows it by saying we should couple our imagination with trust. So there we have sit, surrender, S, surrender, I, imagine, T, trust. We sang it in that chant. God is holding me. God is holding me. In a little while, you're going to hear Bob sing a song by Eddie Watkins Jr. called When You Believe. It's believing and trusting. And I want to close it with this quote from David Alexander, Reverend David Alexander, one of our ministers, who said it this way, and why wouldn't we trust this? The same intelligence that created the universe also created you and is in a state of perpetual recreation through the activity of your thoughts. Trust. So to create outside the box is not a big, rigorous challenge. It's really about getting that bigger idea. So surrender, be available to it. Imagine, let it tap you on the shoulder, and trust. So whatever you're facing this week, whether it's big or small, let's agree that we're going to sit and we're going to create outside the box. Namaste.